Finishing our Star Trek Enterprise kit tonight on Monster Hobbies. Let's build it! Hello everybody, my name is Trevor Selescu and I'm the owner of Monster Hobbies in High River, Alberta, Canada. Well, here it is, possibly the last video of this series, and I'm going to show you how to finish up gluing the final bits on our Starship Enterprise kit and then gluing the model up as a whole and displaying it on your shelf. But that part's pretty easy. So now let's go down to the bench and see how to finish our starship. Alright, welcome back down to the bench again. And as you can see, I've gathered up all our components here in our workstation. And we're going to show you, I'm going to show you how to assemble this all together and make these collection of pieces into one mighty starship. So the first place I'm going to start is with our secondary hull right here, because that's the epicenter of our starship. That's going to be the main piece that holds together our engine pylons and the neck and saucer and makes the whole thing into one solid starship. But before we do that, we have to glue on the little pieces that make up the secondary hull, which at this stage is basically the main navigational deflector array. So let's go down and see how to do that. And here we have our secondary hull, and I've got it sitting on our display stand right now. And we need to glue in our main deflector dish here. Nice bright yellow, just like the instructions say. But the problem is, if you try to put it in here, sitting on the stand, as you're gluing, it's just going to sag and fall out based on the weight of this thing. So we need to resecure our secondary hull so it's actually in an upright position. Then we can glue in our deflector dish, and under its own weight, without me bumping the table, of course you get the idea, that it will stand upright. So how are we going to do this? Well, a clever suggestion would be to use some Lego bricks, or in this case Duplo bricks, and build a little box around this to make it stand upright. So that's what I'm about to do. So now I've created a little Duplo Lego holder here. Notice I've used the red, yellow, and blue of the Starfleet colors, the uniform colors. Now I can actually set this whole secondary hull right down to here. If I wanted to, I could actually add a couple more Duplo bricks just to hold it there, but I don't think it's necessary, because there goes our main deflector dish right there. And I can glue this dish in and leave it overnight and let it set up nice and straight in there. Now we have two things we need to clean up. So in order to get parts to stay in permanently, you need a good paint or plastic to plastic contact. You can't have paint to plastic because you can't glue on the paint. So what we will do here is we're just going to lightly take the hobby knife and scrape along the bottom of this peg, like how I'm doing here, in order to clean up that gluing surface. Removing the paint from it. And you could also carefully try to scrape that bottom bit of it if you want, but I think that might be pretty good. And then the second question is, now how do we get it out of that hole there? Well, I have this little tool. You could also put a hobby knife in there, but this is a hole enlarging tool that my dad made up. It's basically a metal rod that's been hammered flat on 4 points. So I'll just move that for right now. And then again, carefully, because I don't want to enlarge the hole, I just want to knock the paint out of it. So I'm just going to twist this in a little bit, using its own pressure and not mine. and then blow the dust out of the hole. And now I have a paint-free hole down there that this sensor dish will glue into. So I've moved the Lego bricks over to a neutral bench that I have here. It's not going to be our main workbench, just so that this can dry up. And what I'm going to use here is our very old, very good Tester's tube glue, because this is a cement and it actually has thickness to the glue. What I'll do is just move this hand around here on this side of the tripod. Actually, I'm going to switch over. Oh, and very carefully, just apply, some of this glue, and hope it doesn't drip everywhere. There's a nice little stretched out angel hair glue strand. I actually wrapped it right around the tripod. And now very carefully there. And that's looking nice and square. That little glue got on there. Angel hair. Actually, that's looking really good. I'm looking at it from different angles here. Make sure it's not cantered over. So let me take the camera off the tripod and just show you. And there we have it from that angle, and you can see that it's clearly sitting nice and square. So there we go. With the secondary hull drying up the main deflector dish there, we now have an opportunity to do some of these other parts to prepare them for gluing. So we're looking at two warp engines here. Just moving these little intercoolers out of the way. And what we can do here is, again, scrape the paint off these little pegs, like so. And this will allow for that plastic to plastic glue contact instead of plastic to paint, which never works. You know, I know a lot of professional model builders that say that the Tester's glue falls apart. And the question I have to ask them is, did you scrape the paint away from the contact surfaces? Now, it is important, it even says that in the instructions to do. And I've found in my own experience that I've had models over 40 years old where all I used was good old Tester's glue, and they're still holding together. The only times that they've actually fallen apart is in Alberta. Some of mine have fallen apart just because the weather up here is so dry that over time it will loosen up that glue joint. However, the ones that have fallen apart are pretty few and far between. So you'll note here I'm also scraping a bit of paint off of here. This part you will not see when it's glued down, but it may be important to the strength of the glue joint of your model, because just gluing on the pins is not quite enough. You do need a little bit of glue on the other surfaces here just to secure a good bond. So that's basically that one cleaned up. I guess I can put this engine to the side because it's going to be the same process exactly. And here's one of our rear intercoolers. I'm just going to scrape the paint right off the bottom here in this area. As again, this is a long surface that will allow a little bit of extra glue support on our plastic to plastic. This one may be a little bit hard to see exactly what you're scraping because it is painted in the same kind of gray as the plastic, so it's always a bit tricky. But if you maneuver your knife around, you will eventually clear it off. And remember our little pegs here, they also have to be cleaned. And there we go. Now you might also notice a little bit of paint chipping here. You can always touch that up, of course, or maybe not at all. If we grab one of the warp engines here, I just got to take it off the stand. Just do a dry fit. Now, a little thing here. So yeah, you can't even really notice where the paint chipped there. So it's fine enough. Now there's a question on this before we continue. As you see here, one side is tapered down and one side is very square cut. I have to look at the instructions to see which way this goes, but I do believe it is that way, with the square going to the front of the ship and the roll going to the back. So check your instructions though. I will after I put this down. Again, we've got paint in these little holes, so I'm just going to use the hole enlarger here just to knock the paint out. Seem to have a little bit of a fight back with that plastic strip that's glued in there for support. So hopefully it won't be too much of a problem. I'm going to put a little there and a little twist here. And then I'm going into these holes. These holes are at a bit of an angle, so just be aware of that when you're cleaning them up. And here, there, just blow some of that away. And now the question is, remember when I said about cleaning up the bottom of this on the intercooler? What we can do now is just see where that intercooler hits. Then I'm going to take this knife with the number 16 blade, and I'm just going to tilt it in and scrape a little line just right where that intercooler edge meets the edge of the model. And I can see here that this little bar, you can see it, there we go, this little bar and this area right on the end of the intercooler are very close together. So technically here, now I can see that little scar mark cut through the paint. There, you see it? So I'm just going to take this blade and I'm going to scrape back down here just a bit. And actually it might be good idea just to make a little cut line there. So when you scrape the paint, it doesn't explode a big piece of it off into a part that you are going to see that you'll need to touch up. So now, getting to that bar, you can just scrape it right there. And there. Now I've got enough paint scraped out of there, but not too much, so that when that goes over there, it successfully makes my scrapings disappear. And it will give a better glue joint to this area right here, because not only are you going in the hole, you're also going outside of that hole. And then we can do the same thing for the front. You can actually see that it's not too far around this area. So just technical difficulty here. I'm just going to draw that along there. Now that gives me a little bit of an indication as to where it's going to go. I'm going to keep this one to the bottom of that hole. Let's do a little thing there like that. I think think they just actually made it pop out. No, maybe not. Okay. Ooh, hit the tripod with the end of the knife. And there we go. So now when we glue that together, all of that is hidden, and we will have a very, very good glue joint right there. And I would say to do the same kind of thing here. Just kind of put those in place and trace around with the back edge of your knife and then scrape with the front. And you should have a really good glue joint on these. Now our final phase on here for this warp engine, after we glue these pieces in of course, is to get it ready for the end cap to go on. Now keep in mind that we did spray the entire warp engine, so there's going to be paint along this edge here. So what I'm going to do here is, this is a lighter sandpaper, approximately 400. I'm just going to use that on the back here to remove the paint. Now I decided to use sandpaper on a squeaky wooden block. Probably drove you crazy. Gonna use sandpaper because I think it might be a little better than getting the knife and going on it, just in case it catches a little bit of this paint and causes it to crack off. Oops, the sandpaper will not do that. So there, as you can see, that removed the paint off there. Now next up is our end cap, and because I had it on the tape, it actually has blocked off paint from getting on the end there. However, there is one thing I have noticed. My little strips that I added in here for reinforcement, they tend to interfere with one of these little pegs sticking out of the end cap. And I noticed on the other engine it actually caused it to crack. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to inspect where the pressure is, because it doesn't seem to want to fully click on there. And I'm going to actually cut off one of these mounting pegs so that this sits better. Because really, it isn't on the mounting pegs where you want to glue, but actually all the way around, so that the whole surface here is going to glue to this surface here. And keep in mind that there is one peg that needs to stay, and that's that little one that sits into here, because this will give you your alignment for the end cap to keep it square when it is in the ship, because here you have your main support, and that's going to be at that 45-degree angle or whatever it is on the Enterprise. So what I'll do for this is carefully cut this off. Try not to cut my finger off. Actually, what I can do is use a knife with a sharp blade. Okay. Just going to do this carefully. There it goes. Alright, I got that one removed. I'm going to sand it with the sandpaper here. Trying to keep it flat. You may or may not need to do this. You should actually check the fit on the back of your engine with your end cap. There's just something going on with this one that is uniquely odd. Okay. And now let's see if that has actually altered anything here. it seems to be on this end. Maybe another way I can do this is by just scraping along here. Or maybe I should just cut that one off. Yeah. Still acting up. So I will cut this one off. Actually, yeah. Do a little cross sanding method here. Now this should work. Yep, and there we go. That is a better fit. So, although my locations are a bit wrong. Now, like I said, check your own engine. Make sure you don't need to cut these tabs off, because I just realized that I actually switched these caps, because the ones that I painted, remember I painted that black on there. Actually, I painted the cap some color. Anyway, I repainted it, and my paint had an attack right there, and it wrinkled all up. So I didn't want to show that on film, but I'm letting you know now. These are actually not from this kit. They are from my spare parts bin. And somebody had glued them on a model and then broke them off. So maybe that glue that broke off is actually what's causing this not to fit right. But with the removal of the two pegs, it actually will work. Okay, so getting back to gluing, I'm going to apply a little bead of glue around here and then squish it on. Now I'm going to use the Citadel Games Workshop glue because it has this nice long needle with a very tiny hole, which will allow me to control this a lot better. Actually, wait, prior to actually getting this done, I'm scraping the paint off this peg here. Just so we have that. Kind of got carried away with trying to get it off these little peg posts that I forgot about one of the main spots it's going to be gluing into. Maybe this will help it too. Okay. In fact, oh, I don't know. Let's glue onto the end of our warp cap here. Okay, there's that. Now, carefully put this cap on here. Making sure that it's even when we look at it, the alignment here. Making sure it's even all the way around. I think that has it. Did I just knock it out? No, I think that's got it. So there we go. So far, so good. And then all I will need to glue is, or do is glue these on. And glue that interior intercooler on. And and do the same for the other warp engine, and then that is ready to go. The next thing we want to look at is putting in the bridge domes on our saucer section here, and that would be these guys. The one with the button goes underneath and the smooth one goes on top. Now it's easy enough to do because we haven't painted the bottom here, so this is all fresh. And it's easy enough just to take our little hole enlarging tool and just put it in here and give it a nice little twist, of course to break the paint off in the holes, because all we really need is a little glue here and a little glue there, and it will hold it in place pretty well. But there is one thing I want to do that's going to make this model look a lot better, is that, as you can tell, this is a clear dome in here, and that means you can see through it. So what I have here is a book that I made up, Starfleet Model Kit Data Files. It's pages and pages of, well, of course, different Star Trek notes and things that I made up. One thing that I've made is these are the bridge of the Enterprise at the 30-degree offset with the turbo elevator right in behind. These are from one of the technical manuals. I'm not quite sure if it's a Franz Joseph manual or not. I can't remember. However, if you take and cut these out and you cut the elevator off like I did on this one, it will fit into that space right under that dome. And it makes for a really good little indication that there is a bridge in your Constitution class starship. So you can do this same thing too. Just find an image of the bridge like this and reduce it down and print it out. Now I think I've done this in some kind of just general photo type of thing, so it gives you a lot of little pictures you can put on into one space. Now, as you can see, this is in black and white, so those little red handrails have to be painted on that, and I'm going to use some Warhammer Citadel Wild Rider Red. This is acrylic, water-based, and I'm also going to use this little pinstripe brush here to do it. So I will paint the little rails, and then I'm going to cut it out with the scissors and just glue it with a little dab of crazy glue in there, and then stick the image in. And then I'll glue the dome on the top, and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so as you can see, something that is just such a simple, small detail can really add a lot of depth to your model. And this, again, is just something I printed off of one of the tech manuals. And, well, let's see if I can solidify this a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to carefully put a drip of the Warhammer glue into this hole here and the little hole in front. So that needle is pretty nice. And then I'm going to drop that right in place. And there. Now you can see through the dome the little bridge. Let's see if I can zoom in here. I'm gonna lose my focus. Yep. Okay, I'll zoom out and I'll just lift the saucer up. There we go. So now you can see the significance of just adding that little extra detail. And as you can see, that bridge fits perfectly right under that dome, just like on the real thing. Now that we've got our little bits glued on our saucer, we want to get this ready for the final glue up. And in order to do that, we have to clear the paint out of this slot for the neck. So I've got two hobby blades here. One is a number 11 and the other is a number 16. And what we will do is use our number 11 inside here and just carefully scrape this paint out. and same on the upper side here, and on our ends and ends. And then we're going to flip over to the number 11 blade and scrape this way on this back bit back here. This will allow the top of the dorsal neck to glue in on the top of this as well as onto the sides, making a very good glue joint. So this is basically an easy process. I'll just do a little bit of this. But you can see that the paint comes off fairly easy in here, because after all, this area is just full of overspray and nothing really too serious. There. So that's looking fairly decent. And then, like I said, this knife here, if you can get that chisel blade down the right way, you can easily scrape the paint out of there, just like that. So now I'm going to carry on cleaning out that inner bit, and we'll move on to the next stage. Next up, we'll get back to our secondary hull. We're going to remove this piece of masking tape that has been sitting on here for a very, very long time. Now, there is a technique here. You need to pull up on the ends and move it away at that type of angle, just like that. And that will pull the paint off this way instead of trying to rip it off that way. And there we are. Now your masking tape should have protected this area from any of the paint, which on this it appears that it does. And now you can remove the tape off your warp drive engine pylons at the back just in the same manner. Now here I've got our warp engines. Actually, what I'll do is, instead of peeling the tape off like I said, we're just going to pry it underneath and then roll this off, and like I say, peel it up this way so that you get that edge rolling away from this direction and rolling in this direction. And there. The tape did its job, and the end of that pylon is free of paint. And now that our 4 elements are completely built, we are going to assemble these all and make one final starship. Now what you see here is a special jig that my dad made for this particular Enterprise kit. This is a piece of 3/8 plywood with a bunch of little wooden bits glued onto it and some nails here. This is also a special little jig my dad made for the 1/1600 scale starships that just pops in like that. And over here is one for a transport tug in this size. However, we want the big ship. So, our saucer section is going to go here. The secondary hull and the warp engines will be glued together like this, and then some glue will go on that neck support, and then the model will drop in here and get aligned about there. And then to apply some downward pressure, we're going to put these rubber bands on the nail and come across and snap it in position like that, and another one back here to go over our warp engines, and then we allow the glue to set up overnight, and then our starship will be complete. Alright, so I'm just going to take this rubber band off here for right now. And we'll lift this up. Take these guys out. Okay. Now that that's in position, I'm going to use my Games Workshop Citadel plastic glue here. I'll just put a bunch in here. I'll start in the center, and then let's see, let's put it along the sides of the neck. Then I'll put a bunch in here. Now this area should be fairly free of paint. Okay, got a little on the outside, but I can easily wipe that off. Okay. And I think what I'll do is a bit of a bonus measure here. I'm going to take the old Tester's glue and just put a bit on the bottom here. It's going to come out of my tube. Just a sec. I'm going to do this off camera just to avoid a messy accident. Oh, come on. Oh, I hate when this kind of stuff happens. Okay, I'll just put a little bit on here. Just put it down a little bit using the back end, just in case it decides to squeeze out everywhere. And then another little bit on this. And of course, just a quick wipe down, spread it out a bit. Oh, now. Okay, let's get a little squeeze out here. The second engine, Feels pretty solid. Now, of course it's not solid because it needs time to cure, but it should be good enough to carefully turn her over, drop it into the jig. Now I think I need a little more glue in the underneath there, so let's just leave that like that for a sec. I think when I was trying to get the tester's glue to work, it solidified the Games Workshop glue a bit. Okay, now I'm going to slide this saucer forward a little. And then, now that this is in here, I just got to sit down for a sec. I'm going to give that a little push down, and then I'm going to put this rubber band across here to get that tension on there. Check all the little areas and put another rubber band down here. Keep those warp engines nice and aligned, and with downward pressure here, this is the funnest part of the whole kit. I will put another rubber band here going across to this one, give a little more pressure right there, and it appears oh wait, you can also do another cross one here. Now the tension is really high on this secondary hull, and that's exactly the way we want it, because we want to get the pressure in there. And on the other side, which I'm just going to check here, yes, this is looking fantastic. My dad was an engineer at the telephone company. Took a lot of drafting. And now, just going to move that into the proper positioning so that it fits nicely. There's still a little gap here, but it's the best we can do, because remember we cut away a bit of the front of the neck so it would fit a little better in there. So now everything looks nice and square. Now we just let this thing sit for overnight, and in the morning we're going to have a nice little Starfleet surprise. Here we are the following morning, and let's take off the rubber bands on here and see how this held together. I even wore a different shirt, as you can see. Okay. And the final band. And there it is. Oops. There's our Constitution class starship, the U.S.S. Constitution, ready to be displayed on our shelves. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Monster Hobbies Let's Build It, where we finalized our model kit of the U.S.S. Enterprise, or in my case, the U.S.S. Constitution. And it did turn out to be quite nice, didn't it, after all that? Even following the really odd paint schemes that were in that call-out sheet from AMT Ertl so many years ago. It's actually quite nice. Especially the old Machine BT font, eh, Barry? I don't know, but it does look decent. So now, this is the end of this video, and I hope that I've been able to help you to assemble and build an out-of-the-box model kit of your Enterprise. In future videos, I want to show you some advanced techniques, and I will be referring back to these previous videos. So, for instance, if we're going to do something with this turbo elevator, and you want to know how to build the saucer section, I will refer you back to that video in the future. So, in the meantime, please, if you have just tuned into this video and watched the whole thing, don't forget to check out these other 3 videos. Check out our Monster Hobbies website, www.monster-hobbies.ca, and don't forget to like and subscribe to us here so we can bring you further videos. And until next time, enjoy your model and live long and prosper.